You think an ape who hasn't finished in evolving can crack a problem I built?
That got a big laugh. Whole room. 300 people cracking up like it was a comedy show, not a math competition at Columbia University. Professor Gerald Whitfield stood at the podium.
I gave that same problem to my golden retriever once. Took him 3 minutes to walk away.
The room lost it. Cora didn't flinch. She looked straight at him and said,
"Are you done? Because I'd like to see the problem now."
Whitfield grinned.
Fine. Let's see how fast you quit.
She didn't quit. She made every single person who laughed that day choke on it, starting with him. To understand what happened that day, you need to understand the room Cora Lawson walked into. The Whitfield Sterling Open Mathematics Invitational, held every year at Columbia University in New York City. 19 years running, founded, funded, and chaired by one man, Professor Gerald Whitfield. This wasn't some local science fair. Past winners went on to MIT, Princeton, and Fields Medal shortlists. Winning this competition didn't just look good on a college application, it launched careers. It changed lives. And for 19 straight years, Gerald Whitfield decided who got that chance. The lecture hall seated 300. Mahogany walls, portraits of past winners lining the corridor outside. Every single one white, every single one male, except for one woman added in 2018. The judges sat elevated on a raised platform, looking down at the contestants below. 5 panelists, Whitfield in the center chair. The audience was exactly what you'd expect. Prep school kids in blazers. Their parents in the third row already networking. Private tutors standing in the back, arms crossed, scouting. A live stream running with a few hundred viewers. Press from 2 academic journals. And then there was Cora. Cora Lawson, 16 years old. Born and raised in Brownsville, Brooklyn, one of the toughest neighborhoods in New York City. She lived with her grandmother, Gloria Lawson, in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building where the elevator hadn't worked in 3 years. Her school, Frederick Douglass High, had its math program cut 2 years ago. Budget problems. No advanced classes. No math team. No teacher qualified to read what Cora had been writing in her notebooks since she was 13. Because here's the thing about Cora Lawson. She taught herself. Library books, free online lectures, YouTube videos at 2 in the morning on her grandmother's old tablet with a cracked screen. She studied number theory the way other kids studied video games, obsessively, joyfully, alone. Her notebook, a $2 marble composition book from the bodega on the corner, was filled with original proofs. Not homework, not practice problems. Original work. Theorems she built herself, from scratch, in handwriting so small you'd need a magnifying glass to read it. No teacher had ever reviewed that notebook, because no teacher at her school could. So how did she end up at Columbia? Her brother Derek, 24 years old, worked night shifts loading trucks at UPS so their grandmother wouldn't lose the apartment. Derek found the competition flyer crumpled up on a bulletin board at a community center in East New York. Entry was free, open to the public. Any high school student could register. He smoothed out that flyer, brought it home, and said, "You should do this." Cora looked at him. "It's at Columbia." So? "So I don't exactly fit the profile, Derek." He didn't argue. He just said, "You fit the math." That Saturday morning, Derek borrowed a car from his coworker, drove Cora across the bridge into Manhattan, and dropped her off in front of a building that looked like it was designed to make people like them feel small. Cora wore her best clothes, clean jeans, a pressed white blouse, her grandmother's good earrings, small gold studs that Gloria wore to church every Sunday for 30 years before she gave them to Cora and said, "You wear these when you need to remember who you are." She arrived 40 minutes early. She walked into the registration lobby alone. The volunteer at the check-in table looked at her school name, Frederick Douglass High, and asked twice if she was in the right building. Cora said yes both times. The volunteer shrugged and handed her a name badge. When she entered the lecture hall and sat down, the seat next to her stayed empty. The whole row filled up on both sides. But that one seat, right next to Cora, stayed empty for the entire pre-competition briefing. Like there was an invisible wall around her. Now let me tell you about the man she was about to face. Gerald Whitfield wasn't some fraud. That's what makes this story hurt. He was a real mathematician, published in the Annals of Mathematics, cited hundreds of times, tenured at Columbia for over 20 years. He had earned his authority the hard way, and he believed, truly believed, that talent came from a certain kind of background, certain schools, certain families, certain zip codes. He wasn't evil. He was worse than that. He was certain. And his favorite student, the one everyone expected to win, was already seated in the front row. Harrison Moore, 18, Dalton Academy, two-time semi-finalist. Whitfield had mentored him personally since he was 14. Harrison glanced at Cora once when she sat down. Then he looked away, the way you look past something that isn't worth noticing. But Cora, she opened her notebook under the desk and looked at a proof she'd written back in February, 5 months ago, before she even knew this competition existed. She had been waiting for a room that could understand what was inside that notebook. She just didn't know the room would try this hard to keep her out. The competition started at exactly 9 in the morning. Whitfield stood at the podium, adjusted his microphone, and welcomed the room. 42 contestants, the best young math minds in the tri-state area. That's what he called them. This competition demands rigor, he said. It demands discipline. It demands the kind of intellectual preparation that separates serious mathematicians from... He paused, let his eyes drift across the room, and landed on Cora for exactly 1 second. Hobbyists. A few people in the audience smiled. They got the message. The qualifying round rules were simple. 5 problems, 30 minutes. Show all work on official competition paper using the competition pens provided. No outside materials, no calculators, no personal notes of any kind. That last rule hit different for Cora. A proctor walked down the aisle collecting anything that wasn't issued by the competition. When he reached Cora's desk, he picked up her marble notebook, the one with 5 months of original proofs, the one she'd carried from Brownsville like a lifeline, and dropped it into a plastic bin without looking at it. Cora watched it go. Her jaw tightened. For the first time since she walked into that building, something close to fear crossed her face. That notebook was her entire arsenal. Every idea, every framework, every shortcut she'd built in the dark, alone, at 2 in the morning. Gone. Just like that. But then the problem set landed on her desk. 5 pages, stapled in the corner. The questions were projected on the big screen at the front of the hall so the audience could follow along. Cora picked up the competition pen, read problem 1, and started writing. Her handwriting was small, precise, fast. She moved through the first problem like she was reading a sentence she'd already memorized. Problem 2, same thing. Problem 3, she paused for maybe 10 seconds, then kept going. By the 10-minute mark, most contestants were stuck on problem 3. Some were still on 2. A few were already sweating. Cora was on problem 4. A parent in the audience leaned over to the person next to them and whispered, "Who is that girl?" Nobody answered, because nobody knew. Harrison Moore, 3 rows to her left, was working steadily, confident, clean handwriting. He was on problem 3, ahead of most, behind Cora. But problem 5 was where things got interesting. Cora reached it with 11 minutes still on the clock. She read it once. Then she read it again. And then she did something nobody else in that room did. She stopped. Not because she was stuck. She stopped because something was wrong. The problem itself, the way it was written, didn't work. She could feel it the way a mechanic feels an engine vibrating wrong before anything breaks. The math didn't land. Something was off in the bones of it. She read it a 3rd time, and there it was. The 3rd term in the series. the exponent. It was written as cubed, but if you carried that through the expansion, the whole series blew up. It diverged. No bounded solution. The problem, as written, was impossible. Not hard, impossible. Cora looked up at the screen. The same wrong problem projected for everyone to see. 300 people staring at it, 41 other contestants working on it, and not one of them had noticed. She looked back down at her paper. She had 11 minutes left. She could just skip it, play it safe, move on. But Cora Lawson didn't come all the way from Brownsville to play it safe. She finished her answer for what the problem should have been, the corrected version with the right exponent, then set her pen down and waited. Hands flat on the desk. Calm. The timer counted down. Other contestants scribbled frantically. Cora sat still. Because she knew something the rest of them didn't. And in about 5 minutes she was going to say it out loud, in front of everyone. Time was called. Pens down. Proctors moved through the rows collecting papers. Whitfield stood at the podium and announced that results would be reviewed by the panel. The top 16 would advance to the semi-final round. Standard procedure. But before that, he opened the floor. If any contestant wishes to raise a procedural question about the problem set, he said, now is the time. Silence. 41 contestants sat there. Some looked relieved. Some looked defeated. A few were already packing up, sure they hadn't made the cut. Nobody raised a hand. Nobody had anything to say. Except Cora. Her hand went up. Steady. No hesitation. Whitfield saw it and his eyebrows climbed. He looked at her the way you look at a dog that just stood on its hind legs. Surprised. Amused. Slightly annoyed. Yes, he said. The young lady from, he checked his sheet, Frederick Douglass High. He said the school name the way you'd say the punchline of a joke. A few people in the audience chuckled. Cora stood up. She didn't rush. She didn't mumble. She spoke clearly, loud enough for the whole room to hear without raising her voice. Problem 5, Professor. Whitfield tilted his head. What about it? The third term in the series. The exponent is written as cubed. I'm aware of what I wrote. Then you're aware it doesn't work. The room shifted. You could feel it. That sudden tightness in the air when someone says something that wasn't supposed to be said. A few parents leaned forward. Harrison Moore stopped packing his bag. Cora continued. Her voice was calm, almost clinical. If you carry the cubed exponent through the expansion, the series diverges. There's no bounded solution. The partial sums keep growing. They never settle. She paused, just long enough to let that land. The intended exponent was squared. If you correct that, the series converges through standard partial sum analysis, and the proof follows a clean path. I solved it with the corrected version. Dead quiet. 300 people, not a cough, not a whisper. Whitfield's face went through about 4 expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, irritation, a flash of something that looked like doubt, then a mask, smooth, professional, controlled. He turned to Professor Nathan Caldwell, the young associate professor sitting to his right on the panel. Caldwell was already checking the problem on his tablet. His fingers moved fast. His eyebrows went up. He looked at Whitfield and gave a small nod. Almost invisible. But Cora saw it, and so did anyone who was paying attention. Whitfield cleared his throat. He adjusted his microphone, and he said, "That's a printing error. It will be taken into account during scoring." That's it. That's all he said. No thank you. No acknowledgement. No good catch. No impressive work. Nothing. He moved on immediately, like Cora had pointed out a typo in the lunch menu. But here's what everyone in that room understood, even if nobody said it out loud. A 16-year-old girl from a school with no math program just found an error in a problem designed by a tenured Columbia professor, the man who created this competition, who had been writing these problem sets for 19 years. And she explained exactly why it was wrong and exactly how to fix it in front of his own audience, on his own stage. And he couldn't even say thank you. The audience noticed. The murmurs started low, then spread. People were whispering to each other. A few were typing on their phones. The live stream chat, which had been dead for most of the qualifying round, suddenly started moving. Dr. Elaine Prescott, sitting at the far end of the judges' table, hadn't said a word the entire morning. She was a visiting professor from MUSE